Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining today's program titled Finding Equanimity in the Midst of Uncertainty with our presenter, Gullu Singh. My name's Jeff Bills. I'm a member of the Beverly Hills Bar Association Labor and Employment Law Section Executive Committee, and I'm on the Board of Governors. This presentation is being given both by the Labor and Employment Law section together with the Work-Life Balance section. We're very pleased today to have with us attorney Gullu Singh. Gullu is a corporate real estate attorney who regularly teaches both secular as well as Buddhist classes and groups at InsightLA and at the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. And he's taught mindfulness at the University of Southern California and also has been a guest lecturer on mindfulness at the UCLA School of Law. He's presented for the Beverly Hills Bar Association in the past, and some of you may recognize him. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gullu for his presentation today, with our thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I see some familiar names in the list of attendees, so that's nice. So today I'm going to provide some reflections on navigating uncertain times, and this is all in the context of mindfulness meditation. So I thought it would be good to start with a kind of short meditation practice to just arrive into the virtual space together. And I say together because maybe even though we can't see one another, there is some sense that we're doing this together. So inviting you just to notice that you have a body, and that body is connected to the floor. Perhaps you can feel the weight of your feet on the floor. And the body is connected to a chair or a sofa or a cushion. And that you can feel the weight of the body in your feet. And you can close the eyes if that's comfortable and just notice what's happening in the body. What sensations are most prominent? How's the energy moving in the body? Are there some emotions present? It's a kind of gentle connecting, a gentle inventory. Might touch into the thinking mind and notice if the thinking mind is active, as it often is for many of us in the middle of the day. Or maybe it's more quiet. And then I'm going to invite you to take 3 intentionally deeper breaths and sigh out the exhale. So it'll be like this. We'll do that 3 times. You can do that at your own pace. And then just checking in again briefly. Maybe noticing some effect to this intentional breathing. Ring that bell to mark the end of that short meditation. So the topic for today is finding equanimity in uncertain times. So maybe I should start by defining equanimity. This word, the etymology actually comes from, I think it's Greek, equus meaning equal. So it's a kind of equal-mindedness. a kind of balance of mind. It's when the mind, you might say the heart, the emotional center of the body, this mind-body system is more balanced and stable. It's the kind of and flexible. It's the kind of you sometimes hear the Zen analogy of bamboo reeds that bend in the wind so they don't break. It's that kind of flexibility of mind. And it's also the kind of stability of a mountain that's unshakable and unmovable. And most importantly, this quality of mind or heart is not so dependent on external conditions. So when everything is going well, when we're kind of in our groove, it's very easy to be even-minded and even-keeled. This talk will speak to more about how we can develop a kind of equanimity that is not so dependent on everything being great. Because if we look around, we see that quite often, and maybe especially now, things are not so great. So when the mind is focused on uncertainty, it leads to a variety of familiar experiences. Probably the most prominent or common is anxiety, this feeling of it's like a vibratory pit in the stomach kind of feeling. We have maybe restlessness, and sometimes it's associated with a leaning forward or a bracing or tension in the body. And one signature of this energy is that there is energy to do something, but a lot of times the energy doesn't really know what to do, or sometimes there is nothing to be done. There's this feeling of being compelled to do something. And a variety of things related to that, fear, nervousness, dread, whole constellation of emotions that are similar to or come from or related to anxiety, tends to be unpleasant. This is often why we consider a problem, because it's very unpleasant. Anxiety can lead to overwhelm, or which can lead to a kind of collapse or paralysis, can even lead to depression. So that's one sort of set of the things I'm going to talk about are we might say the emotional effects or the emotional reactivity that we have when things feel uncertain. And then something usually happens in the mind, something in meditative circles we call the planning mind or the fixing mind, often a kind of recursive or circular thinking. We're trying to figure it out. These thoughts repeating over and over again. The ancient sages likened this to an ox chasing its tail. It goes around and around and around, but nothing really gets resolved. And again, this is like that feeling of like we have to do something. And so those of us with strong planning and fixing minds, which I dare say is most people in the legal profession, it's our strength that we can plan and we can figure things out and we can fix them. But it can also become a sort of compulsion that we're trying to solve the problem in a kind of intellectual, ruminating way. And sometimes we make decisions out of the planning mind because we feel like we have to do something. So this is why, earlier in the pandemic, you saw so many people stocking up on a year's worth of toilet paper, like, got to do something. So let's do that. Something is better than nothing. And another related phenomenon is what I call the need to know. When things are uncertain, there's usually because there's many unknowns. And so there's a desire to know. And for me, that often is an obsession with the news and social media, trying to, as if I could collect enough facts and I could know the right things, then I would feel better, which is also somewhat illusory. So in 2016, right after the election, I went on a long meditation retreat. And in these meditation retreats, you go to a center and you actually turn in your devices and you are in a kind of seclusion from the world. You're not in contact with the outside world. The endeavor is just to meditate. And so what I was noticing as I was embarking on this process is that there was like just this feeling of dread, like so many things happening in the world that I care about, but I just had no idea what was going on, and I had committed to not being in connection with the world. And so I spoke to a teacher about it, actually, like I'm just feeling this dread and this is terrible and I don't know what to do about it. And my teacher said, I'm sorry that you're suffering, but I'm happy that you're feeling dread. Just kind of curious response. And he said, because the response of dread is the natural response of a caring heart. It was a sign that I hadn't closed down or lost my connection to the larger world. And it was pointing to a connection of some deep caring and the things I care about, things I love, feeling that they were in jeopardy in some way. So this is a powerful kind of insight we can have, is that when there is anxiety or fear or uncertainty, it's because there's something we deeply care about. The ones that we love, ourselves, our well-being, the well-being of others. And if you can bring that experience into the circle of the mind, then the mind is not filled with anxiety. Anxiety and love and caring are coexisting. So it kind of like can dampen the effect of what we're going through. This is from The Onion, Paterson, New Jersey. Quickly kicking off the sheets and reaching for a notepad on his nightstand, local 27-year-old Kyle Dowling reportedly sprang out of bed at 3 a.m. yesterday to jot down an idea for a brand new worry. Quote, sometimes the best, most crippling new anxieties just come to you in the middle of the night, so it's always good to have pen and paper nearby to record them, said Dowling, rapidly scribbling several shorthand notes about a new feeling of debilitating self-doubt that had just entered his mind. If I think of a new paralyzing fear relating to my personal or professional life and I don't immediately write it down, there's a good chance I'll forget it by the time I fall asleep. Upon waking up and rereading his notes from the previous night, Dowling confirmed to reporters that the new worry was even greater than he first thought. So maybe some of you relate to this. But there's a kind of way of, that this anxiety, this restlessness, this feeling of unease is actually quite natural. Like, how can we not be anxious when we're in the middle of a pandemic with so many unknowns and so much changing constantly? How can we not be anxious when the planet itself and its ecosystems are in grave distress? How can we not be anxious in this culture of busyness and over responsibility and overstimulation? When there's a sense of division and conflict in the public discourse. Some of you might remember the environmentalist Julia Butterfly Hill. She is famous for spending 738 days living at the treetops of a 1,000-year-old redwood that was going to be chopped down. This was her protest. And she said something which I really relate to, which is analogous. She said, if you're not angry, then you're asleep. I think we could probably say the same thing. If you're not anxious, then you're not paying attention. And I noticed that when I'm experiencing distress, sometimes there's a kind of hidden paradigm that whatever difficulty is present, that somehow it's my fault, that I've done something wrong, I've failed to execute the proper strategy. It's a character defect. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this talk, that is not the case. That actually the very nature of this body, mind, this realm, this being in a human body is that we experience dissatisfaction. It often comes in waves of pleasure and pain and gain and loss, and fame and shame. And it's always changing. So in that way, even this is uncertain. So the preliminary step that is helpful is to change the way we think about anxiety and the related experiences. So number one, it's not a problem. Spoken about that. It's actually a symptom of a caring and loving heart, which is a beautiful thing. In some ways, this anxiety is our evolutionary history. We are the descendants of nervous apes, and that very fact kept us alive. If there were monkeys or apes eons ago who, upon seeing a lion, thought, "Oh, what a pretty cat, let's go pet it," those apes are not our ancestors. They didn't make it. The system that creates anxiety has evolved in a way to help us. And that's the second sort of way of thinking of anxiety and the associated emotions. They're a kind of feedback mechanism. They're a messenger. That something in this mind-body system needs to be tended to, and meditation is one way to tend to that experience in a way that transforms it. So there's this feeling of just needing to know, or sometimes it's the opposite. We might be like the person on the airplane, eye mask, earplugs, noise canceling headset, hat pulled down, wrapped in a blanket. And that can be a relief, and maybe at times this is what we need to tend for ourselves. Like I have been taking Sunday as a day of to be media free. And it's helpful because the bad news that I would read about on Sunday will still be there on Monday. This tendency that I have, to consume endless amounts of media, again, hoping for the set of facts that will make me feel better. Or sometimes it's even a kind of relishing in the catastrophizing, because when I'm catastrophizing, at least I'm doing something. It feels better than doing nothing. But the reality is that we know on some level that we cannot know. That's the fundamental problem. The nature of the issue is that we do not know what's going to happen, and we cannot know. And this attitude of being able to rest with not knowing is also something we can cultivate in our meditation practice. There's an ancient fable of a of a farmer in, I think it was ancient China. And he was, doing farming things, and his horse ran away. And everyone in the community said, "Oh, this is terrible! Your horse ran away." And the farmer, who was quite wise, said, "We'll see. Don't know. No way to know." And then a few days later, the horse came back, and it came back with 2 other wild horses. People said, "Oh, this is such a great thing. Now you have 3 horses. It's very valuable on a farm." And he said, "Don't know. No way to know. We'll see." And then the farmer's son was trying to break one of the horses, and he got kicked and he broke his leg. And the villagers all said, "Oh, this is terrible. Your son broke his leg." And he said, "Don't know. We'll see." And then there was a draft a few weeks later, and all able-bodied young men were enlisted to fight with some neighboring kingdom, and the son was spared because he was injured. And then this story kind of goes on and on. There's a fire and a flood and all kinds of things, but the point being that we never really know. We think we can make these snap judgments about things, but we don't really know how they're going to turn out. I had this personal experience when I was a younger lawyer working at a big law firm, and I like many people who work at big law firms, was quite miserable and had an opportunity for like what seemed like a great job. It's like really liked all the people. It's interesting work. It was like a trend setting in the industry and paid well, and I could have equity that would, grow in the future. And it came down to two people, and I didn't get the job. I was kind of devastated, really disappointed, and unhappy about it. And 2 years later, that company declared bankruptcy and the CEO went to prison. So you never know. You really never know. You really never know. It's kind of the point of it. And that while times feel especially uncertain with what's going on in the world right now, if you contemplate it deeply, you can see actually that all times are uncertain, that we never really know what the next moment will bring. It's unknown, it's mysterious, it's a potential of nearly infinite possibilities. And this, phrase that I sometimes use, anything can happen. There's kind of, there's two ways to hear that. One is, oh God, anything can happen, like all the terrible things that can happen. And anything can happen, like all the wonderful things that can happen. And so we can expand the view to embrace the positive possibilities and the infinite potential. All times are uncertain, but when the uncertainty touches the ways we spend our time and breaks up the habits and routines or affects central aspects of our life, like its livelihood, we notice it more. The baseline uncertainty that pervades all of our life gets obscured by habits and routines and busyness and activities of work and family and play and joy and all the things that make up a human life. And occasionally we see, I had a friend who, you get to a certain age, it starts happening. I had a friend who just dropped dead, more of an acquaintance, but just had a heart attack and dropped dead. And so that certainly broke up their routines and was devastating. But my point is that all times are uncertain, which I've said a bunch of times. So in meditation, we talk, there are kind of like maybe the many aspects of meditation. I was thinking I could do probably an 8-week course on this topic. So we're just touching the surface here, but two aspects of meditation I want to talk about. And one is the activity of the posture of coming into the moment, setting aside the past and the present and the future, or letting them sort of be in the background, and training the attention to rest on the breath. And we'll do this practice in a little bit. This posture, this attitude, this activity promotes a return to a kind of inner equilibrium. The analogy I like to use is that of a snow globe, that this human life is like walking around in a never-ending, always shaking snow globe. And so we experience life as being in this flurry of activity. And when you take the posture of meditation, you set the snow globe down. And it's the act of setting the snow globe down that creates the conditions which allow the snow to over time settle. So another analogy is like when you run up a flight of steps, you're out of breath, the heart is beating rapidly, the blood pressure is increased, sweating, all the things that happen. But when you stop, the body naturally finds its equilibrium and goes back to baseline. And the mind is actually much the same way, that when we come into our posture of meditation, often with the eyes closed, with minimizing as best we can the external inputs, that creates the kind of condition where the mind can naturally settle. And as we experience the mind settling, we can become more adept at allowing the mind to settle. Where most of us are exposed to a kind of never-ending stream of stimuli. and actually way too much for most of us to be able to digest and metabolize in the moment. So taking a period of seclusion from more stimulus allows you to metabolize and digest what's come before. So that's one aspect of meditation, the stillness, the quiet, the attitude of non-doing, the allowing, and some grander sort of order and wisdom in the system will calm the energy, which is a tremendous relief. Another aspect of meditation is that we move out of the narrative, the story, the thoughts, the worries, and more directly, we substitute the preoccupation with all of those things to place the attention on the sensations of the body in the moment. So on the one hand, we're minimizing new inputs from the environment, but it's not so much an escape, because as we minimize the external, we are focusing more intentionally on the internal, adopting this posture of opening to and connecting with all the things that are happening internally. And to experience what's happening, our topic is anxiety as a sensation in the body. It's hard to win the debate like that trying to think your way out of it or analyze the facts. I mean, maybe there's a time for analyzing facts and planning, but you can't win arguing yourself out of anxiety, and I'm talking to a group of lawyers, so our tendency might be to argue. So to put that tendency aside and to come more in contact with the body, what are the sensations in the body around this experience? Is there tension in some area, restless moving energy, a stuckness, a pit in the stomach or the throat? I like the analogy of a party. Like, say you're at a party and there's a lot of activities, maybe there's music and lots of people chattering, and you're having a conversation with one person. You can hold your attention on that person. As long as it's not too loud, you can have a conversation with that person. All the other things are just in the background. They're still happening. You didn't make it quiet. The things in the background in this case are thoughts, emotions, the mind that's trying to figure things out. And we kind of let it be in the background. And rather than having our attention be on that experience, which is the norm, we have our attention on this experience of what's happening in the body, to allow the heart to feel what it wants to feel, to me, has been one of the most profoundly healing things, something that unfortunately our culture does not often support. And we can become more and more nuanced in how we experience the experience. We might incorporate some labeling, like tingling, vibration, pulsation, gyration, tightness, tension. Research shows, and many of us know from our own experience, that just naming something often reduces the charge of that experience. And labeling, I find, is quite helpful because it gives us a more detailed palette, more colors in the palette for relating to and understanding and describing our experience, and to see the patterns and the conditions that affect us. And each time we meditate, we strengthen our capacity to do this, the capacity to sustain the attention, and then the capacity to bear what is difficult and painful. And it's often when we touch into our experience, it's unpleasant, difficult or hard to bear. And in meditation, we learn to build our tolerance to this discomfort so that we can connect with more and more difficult experiences. And in that connection, allowing the energy to move and settle and transform. And this, we build this capacity just by sticking with it. When we sit, we might feel an itch. Maybe we feel that itch more fully before we scratch it. or we sit through the discomfort of the feet falling asleep. We sit through restlessness, anxiety, grief, allowing in just as much as we can manage, and then increasing what we allow in as our capacity increases, like going to the gym. We lift weights, and then over time, we're able to lift heavier and heavier weights or do more reps. There's some lines from a poem I really like. The poem is called Allow. And it says, when loss rips off the doors of the heart or sadness fills your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth. So we develop this capacity actually to bear the truth of this ever-changing world, the truth of this world that is always in some sense uncertain. And so rather than having the desire to, rather than aiming for security and certainty in this insecure and uncertain world, we learn to develop a sense of confidence. And this confidence is the ultimate antidote to all that ails us. Rather than trying to hold it all together in some perfect balance where we only experience the pleasant things in life, we develop through meditation a confidence that however it goes, the heart can meet this experience. However it goes, it will be okay. And even if it's not okay, it's okay. And we only have to attend to that in this moment. That's just it, just this moment. And then the next, and then the next. And this is that this confidence that we can handle it. We might get toppled down occasionally, but we will stand up. This confidence that we can handle it is a form of equanimity, that in this confidence, the mind is more balanced and at ease, more resilient, flexible, and stable. And the equanimity is durable because it doesn't depend on the conditions being perfect. Rather, it just comes from the confidence that we can meet any condition with grace. So I think it's a good time to switch gears and do a meditation practice. I'll just guide you like we did in the beginning, and then maybe we'll have some time for some discussion. So again, inviting you to find a posture that is comfortable, helpful but not critical to be upright. Maybe a sense of the spine being tall. And then bringing the attention into the body. Again, useful to feel the body being supported, weight of the feet on the floor, and the weight of the tailbone on your seat. And just scanning the body for any area of tension or tightness or holding. And on an exhale breath, inviting the body to soften and settle. Just releasing whatever can be released. And then notice that the body is breathing. And that we can know the body is breathing because we can feel the sensations of the breath moving through the body. Resting the attention lightly on the feeling of the breath and letting everything else just be in the background. The party continues behind you, around you, but the attention just rests on the breath. Breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in. Breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. Just that. And whenever you notice that the attention has wandered, 2 breaths, 1 breath, half a breath, thinking about lunch, it's not a problem. Just gently coming back, this act of coming back, building our capacity to be present. Body breathing in, body breathing out. Allowing this time, this space for the inner snow globe to settle. Might still be in that flurry of activity settling. It's not a problem. Just resting the attention on the breath. If there's some sensation in the body or some emotion that's present, that's pulling you away, you can maybe try including it in the practice as if you were breathing in and out of that part of the body, breathing in and out of that emotion as a kind of way of tending to it, of softening, kind of salve. So for these moments of practice, there's nowhere to go and nothing to do, nothing you have to get or get rid of, no one you have to be. Letting all that responsibility stay in the background and just connecting with this sense of being alive through the breath. A more simple way of being that allows the mind to relax. When you notice the attention has wandered from the breath, quite often it's wandered into thinking. It can be helpful to drop a light mental label into the mind, planning, remembering, daydreaming, worrying, whatever it might be, just an acknowledgement. And then coming back to the feeling of the breath moving through the body. And as best you can, letting this posture, this practice be restful. No need to effort, no need to struggle. Just resting the attention lightly on the feeling of the breath as the body breathes. And then when you notice the mind has wandered from the breath, you might notice what's happening in the body. There are some sensations, some energy, some emotion, which might be leading to some thinking. Seeing if you can touch deeply into the felt sense in the body. Heat or coolness, maybe vibration, tingling, maybe tightness, tension. The areas of discomfort can be helpful to imagine as if the breath were moving in and out of that place of discomfort. And when that feels more metabolized, or maybe you've forgotten, the mind has wandered off again, it's coming back to the feeling of the breath moving through the body. Wherever you notice it, the rise and fall of the chest, the rise and fall of the belly, air at the nose and mouth. Just breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in, breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. Very simple. And when you've noticed that the attention has wandered, this is actually the critical moment. This is the moment of mindfulness. And for some mysterious reason, you suddenly realize, oh, I was meditating and now I'm daydreaming. Actually, we can cherish that moment. We've now remembered. And we can bring the attention back to resting with the feeling of the breath moving through the body. And I'd like to end the meditation with something that I didn't get a chance to talk about, which is gratitude. Gratitude is also nourishment and support when times are uncertain. So bringing to mind something or someone for whom you have a sense of gratitude. If it's a person, you might sense into what it feels like to be in their presence, or it could be an animal. And then notice what gratitude feels like as a felt sense in the body. Where does gratitude reside? What does the energy feel like? Is it static or moving? Is it pleasant? Usually pleasant. And the inner smile that comes with the reflection on what we're grateful for is a powerful nourishment. Taking it in, letting it nourish you. Then letting go of that practice, letting go of anything that feels like a practice, and just a few moments of just resting. Resting in a kind of non-meditation. Mind notices things. We don't have to pick them up. Just let them be. I don't know if you can hear that bell over all the trucks that are outside. So I thought some people stuck around. Thank you. That I would just open it to any questions or reflections. Share how that experience was for you. Just some way for us to interact, and I think you can do that through the chat. There may be a Q&A module too. I see two things.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. I do see that there's a chat coming up. A question is when do you, from one of the participants, when do you meditate? Any particular time?
Yeah, I tend to meditate in the morning, but my recommendation is meditate anytime that you'll actually do it. And for me, it's become it's usually a calendar item where that time is blocked off, and it's like an appointment or a meeting. Tends to be the hardest thing for most people is just to maintain a meditation practice. So really good question to find a time that works for you and find a place that works for you. For years and years, when I worked in law firms, I would meditate in my car in the parking garage. I would park far away from all the other attorneys' cars. And on the second to top floor of the parking garage at Fashion Island in the Newport Beach. And I would just, I had a view of the ocean, and that was my meditation place. Right. Couldn't do it in your office because it was too weird. You probably could do it in your office. Thank you for that question. Anything else?
Well, I wonder, following up on that, I'm sure a lot of attorneys experience that things come up suddenly, urgent things, fires that need to be put out. And how do you handle that then when that conflicts with the calendared time that you've chosen for your meditation?
Yeah, well, I recalendar it. but one of the things I started doing, and this is a lifestyle choice that I made, is that I go to bed relatively early. I'm usually in bed by 10:30, which means I wake up at 6:30. And so I have a window where most of the world is not going to bother me. And that's my practice time.
Do you tie that together with any form of physical exercise or keeping yourself physically in shape?
I do that. That's part of my morning practice. First I do sitting meditation, and then I do, really it's walking meditation. I walk, but I try to be in that receptive attitude, aware of my body in motion, feeling my steps. It's a way of, continuing the practice of letting the mind be grounded on something. This is like, we choose the breath as convenient and it's always there and it's changing. So it's a good object of meditation, but really the mechanism that leads to that, like calming, soothing phenomenon, is just based on the attention being trained. So it could be anything. It could be a candle. It could be, I know meditators who do running meditation, really like the emphasis is on keeping the mind engaged with the physical activity. You can get a lot of the same effects.
So I've heard also some discussion from time to time about so-called M&Ms, or minutes of mindfulness, or how do you feel about that? Just from time to time, maybe not within any scheduled or calendared practice, but how might one incorporate something like that into everyday routine?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think any minute of mindfulness I'm in favor of. So often the way I experience my life and the way I see other people describing their life, it's just like a series of habits. We're caught in a stream. We're doing things on autopilot, and we're very good at doing things on autopilot, and bringing a different quality of engagement to whatever we do it almost necessarily improves it. So I'm very much in favor of that. And that can be as simple as, for years I had the sticky on my monitor, a Post-it note that said, "You have a body." And every time it would come into my field of vision, it's like to be a second or microsecond to just bring the attention from this cognitive sphere to life, that I have this body. And I started listening to it more. Like, I used to do this thing where I would just sit at my desk and I would be hungry and thirsty, but I would be so frenetic or have to go to the bathroom, and I would just ignore all the sort of basic things. Maybe this is familiar to some of you because I'm caught in this stream of all the things that need to be done. And remarkable improvement in my work experience just by listening to those little things, having a drink of water, taking 2 minutes to go to the restroom. So I'm very much in favor of that. I think there is a tendency in our culture to want quick fixes and things that are easy and things that don't require a lot of effort, and that's great. But my experience also has been that that good things often do require practice and effort. We know this professionally. If you want to become good at your job, you have to learn it, be trained and study. And all those things. And I feel like I've dedicated a good portion of my life to trying to do that in the arena of mindfulness, because I think it's just so valuable, and you can have, it's been life-changing for me and so many people I know but it requires buy-in and investment and time, just like an exercise or eating well or any of the things that we can do for ourselves. I think the more we can muster to invest in it, the better results we'll have.
One thing that you talked about today, Gulu, was this image of the snow globe, and how as we go about our daily activities, things are naturally going to be scattered and maybe obscuring our view. And I think that for those of us who practice law, that's going to be inevitable, probably as part of our practice. But do you find that there are some useful ways to mitigate or reduce that flurry, or maybe remove unnecessary components of it in the middle of a busy day, when you're not engaged in mindfulness or meditation formally? Are there things that you do to sort of partially settle?
Yeah. It's a good question. In the snow globe analogy, one of the reasons I like that analogy so much is that in the actual snow globe, and I used to have one, I broke it. Otherwise I'd be shaking it for you. In the actual snow globe, there is no way to settle it other than putting it down. And that's somewhat my experience. But the mitigation is like, can I put it down in the midst of everything? Can I take 15 seconds to just disconnect from all the stimulus? I got screens, I've got phones, I've got all these things that are, even now are like creating stimulus. They're stimulating. Close my eyes for 15, 20 seconds, or look away for 15, look out the window. If you have a window, look into the distance. That can be quite helpful. Also, I noticed that for me, I get more activated when I'm not connected to the physicality of the body. And so just that, remembering you have a body can also be very helpful. I, like many of you, probably spend a lot of time typing. So I have this practice that I make it a point whenever I think of it to feel this part of my wrist rests on a little wrist guard. I can feel the weight of that. And when I'm typing, to actually feel the little nubs on the J and the F and the nice click of the keyboard. Very simple thing, but it brings me here, and a lot of the problem is the mind flitting back and forth to different things, the future, the past, and all the things that have to be attended to.
Yeah, I would think conversely also there might be things that we do mentally or physically that tend to unnecessarily jostle that snow globe, so that it's even more disruptive than it might ordinarily be. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. And some of it is like, there's this sort of like an analogy that comes from the ancient teachings of like someone being struck by an arrow. And, like some of that is inevitable in life, but then there's, the person is lamenting that they got struck by the arrow and wanting to know what kind of wood it was and who shot it and where it came from. And there's so much we add to any experience. For me, there's a whole litany of like, woe is me and critical mind that rears up. That's just extra. It adds to an already uncomfortable experience, and we can learn to see that that's happening and just drop the unnecessary. It's like unnecessary friction in a system that we can. And I found that actually that happens in meditation, because I know when I'm just like letting my thoughts be there and noticing how they're not helping.
That's terrific. Well, I'd like to be respectful of everyone's time. It is 1:30, a little after 1:31. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to share, I think we could take one more, and otherwise I would like to express my gratitude to everybody who participated today and stuck with us, and also to the Beverly Hills Bar Association for this opportunity, and to Gullu for sharing his insights with us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I've included a link for my mailing list if you're interested. I have a group of lawyers that meets once a month. I have other things that I offer. So that link is there if that's something you're interested in. And thank you.